Hey, everybody, welcome to the 8th episode of Foreigners Talk American, the fantastic podcast where I, a lone American, will discuss something interesting about my country's culture with a group of my best foreign friends. With me today is a very diverse group. From New Zealand, we got Jonathan.
Hello.
From South Korea, we got Beth.
Hello.
Also from South Korea, we got Andrew.
Annyeong, hi.
And from Ireland, we got Gary.
Well, how are things?
Gary, I know you're excited. I just heard that British Columbia, where you live, has open bars again. So are you excited about this?
Very excited. It allows me to queue up and eventually get a real draft beer. It's better than the takeaway beers I've been surviving off in jars for the last few days. So I'm very excited about sitting in a bar with my best group of 5 other friends and being 2 meters away from any other group, and in the hope that we will get served and not get sick.
So they're going to be just practicing social distancing in the bars in British Columbia?
Yep. So supposedly all the tables will be 2 meters away, and limited to 50% capacity, and your group can't be more than 6. So should work. But the concern for me is that I have to queue to get in.
But this is actually probably a big milestone in getting things back to normal, because you're a man that loves to go to pubs, right, Gary?
Yep, for sure. This is an aspect of my whole social life. In particular, I'm excited about the after-work drinks, the after-work pints, and then hopefully by Christmas we'll be able to do the 12 pubs again.
What are the 12 pubs, Gary?
12 pubs is an Irish tradition. I don't think it's just Irish, but primarily it's an Irish tradition at this stage, where we go to 12 pubs in the night and have a drink in each of them, hopefully a pint, because otherwise you're kind of cheating. Maybe a shot is acceptable. Definitely a transition to spirits is probably acceptable. Once I lived in a small village where there was only 4 pubs, and we did each pub 3 times. But we still had to leave in between. So it's quite important to achieve this. Basically, every group of friends will do it, although a certain amount of the popularity of it is maybe decreasing, and maybe COVID might put us off going to this many locations in such a short space of time, possibly. But hopefully by Christmas, everything will be fine, yeah?
Well, let's hope for that. And so you actually are able to get through 12 drinks in one night without, like, basically blacking out?
Most of the time. I've definitely had bad 12 pubs and I've had good 12 pubs. It's all about pacing yourself and including water. But you're never in a great state by the end of it, to be honest.
Well, okay. Let's hope that by Christmas we'll be back and you don't have to do the 12 pubs by Skype or something weird.
I think it could work though. You could definitely change your virtual background every drink. Yeah,
just by whatever pub that you would like. So speaking of alcohol, let's get into today's topic, which is education. And we're going to be talking.
What's the relationship?
Well, if you know Gary, alcohol is what allowed him to get through his education. So I thought this would be an appropriate segue into the topic for today's show. So we're going to be talking
about what he got into upon not finishing his education, wasn't it, Gary, like that?
I very much finished my education. Now, my grades probably would have been better without alcohol being involved, but sure, what can you do?
He did a 365 pub tour, like one a day, for a dark year of his life.
A great year of my life. What are you talking about?
But yeah, let's get into American education. So some characteristics about American education is that you generally start off in public school, and the quality of your public school is determined by generally how good or rich your neighborhood is. After public school, you'll get admitted to college, which is determined by your grades and scores and standardized tests. And after graduating from college, you have a lot of student loans and questionable job prospects. Jonathan, do you think this is an accurate description of American education?
I mean, you're the American. You tell me.
That's a better question. Is like, what do you think about this description? What do you think about this description of how American education is?
From what I know, anyways, and what I've seen, quite accurate of what the system is sort of set up to be like. That you pretty much, I don't know what to say actually to that. I think you got it.
Beth, you studied abroad in the Western Hemisphere, right?
Yes.
How would you compare your Korean education to the more Western education?
Well, I think the most distinctive part of education in Korea and to the West is how standardized and quantified all the learning experiences. So for example, although my experience in Korean education isn't quite long, but as far as I remember, they are very much dictated by teachers just talking to the students, like one way, and there's no discussion among the students, and there's very little chance for the students to express their ideas other than the ways of testing. So like,
So the
like
teacher has
multiple
all the power in Korean
Yes.
education. Like the kids can't
Yes.
talk back. There's no opportunity to showcase your opinion. Gary, do you agree that children shouldn't talk back to their teachers?
It depends on the subject. I think certain subjects where the information is coming through, it's important to do it in that way, and then other subjects. But it depends on the subject and depends on what creativity you need in that subject. Certain subjects aren't necessarily for discussion, such as maths and science, where the answer is the truth and that is the truth. Whereas certain things like politics or English or creative ideas should be discussed. So it depends on the subject and depends on how you teach. I'm not saying Irish education system is exceptional. It's definitely quite old school, very Catholic based. So it's different. Depends.
In Korea, like, so Andrew, if the discussion in the class goes to politics, what happens if the teacher has all the power there? Does he just instill his opinion on all the kids?
Yeah, as a guy who experienced the Korean education system from the beginning to end, I don't remember talking about politics or besides the subject. We don't talk about the other various stuff. We only focus in Korean system. The teacher just want to focus on the contents of the subject, not the other politics, not about the society. So basically, we in Korea still, I think students are same. They don't know how to think, how to discuss, how to debate. I think I was very obsessed with memorizing some some vocabularies and some just contents. Okay, you just study, go to the good university, and later you can talk about that kind of the other society matters. So I don't
That's
remember
very
talking
interesting. So does that mean that like
teacher,
is
yeah.
instilled in the Korean culture of just accepting your work and not really expressing your opinion too much? Is that kind of like the stereotype that comes out of this kind of education system?
Yeah, I believe most of I think it's basically same with the Japanese or Chinese society. I think it's so-called Asian society. Respect, obey, your parents, obey and listen, and you should not talk back to them. They're old and experienced, which means they are more mature than you are. You're just teenager. What do you know about it? And basically, that kind of thinking is based on our education system. Children, the students are those who are taught, so they taught and nurtured, right? So
Yeah.
so that's one thing I like about the American system, because you're, I don't know, in the movie or drama, you guys always talk back to teacher, discuss and freedom, and do not have any much
I
push
think you
from
watched Breakfast
pressure.
Club one too many times, Andrew.
What about, do you have any pressure, like get a core and go to good university? Did your teacher say about that in America?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
Like,
pushing
but
you.
I think the teachers
Yeah.
in America also allow a little bit more discussion in the classroom than what it sounds like is available in Korea. But I guess one thing that I want to dive into is like, what is the quality of education from a young age in your countries? Like, for example, in America, like when you go to elementary school, when you go to high school, you have to go to public school usually if you don't want to pay for private school, and it's kind of determined on your zip code. It's determined on the other residents in your neighborhood. So if you live in a rich area, you're probably in a better public school. If you live in a poor area, you're probably in a poor or in a worse public school. Gary, is that similar to how it works in Ireland?
It's similar that it's a postcode lottery, but our areas of poverty or socioeconomics aren't as defined as necessarily your system or your society is. So it's quite diverse in the sense that there will be poorer areas and richer areas in the same area, and they'll all end up in the same school, but it's based, there are better schools in certain areas, and definitely certain people choose where they live based on the zip codes, but it's not so fundamentally based on class as it might be. Our actual school system is primarily based on the parish that the church was within, and so the school system was then based on that. So most people are accepted if they live within the parish of that school, and so that's kind of how it's defined. And then every parish in the country will have a school associated with, or multiple schools, and you can go to those schools if you live and are in that parish, supposedly practicing as a Catholic. But because most of our schools are Catholic schools, it's open to everyone. So it's slightly complicated, but it's based on that more than anything else. It's not necessarily based on socioeconomics, whether it's a good school or a bad school, but definitely people choose where to live to some degree as to which school they'll end up in.
So all public schools in Ireland, or like a good portion of them, are Catholic schools?
Yeah, so I can't remember the exact numbers, but somewhere around 70% are Catholic. And
these are the free schools, the ones that you send your kid.
Yeah.
And they can freely teach what I'm assuming would be a real religion. Religion is taught in the school if it's a Catholic school.
Yeah, so religion would be an aspect in it, but the curriculum is set by the state primarily. But definitely there's religious aspects within that Catholic school. And you would most likely have your preparation classes for your First Holy Communion and your confirmation, which are essential Catholic aspects of your education. And then you would have a diversity of people in the school, and they would just be exempt from the classes, which are primarily Catholic classes.
That's really interesting, because like in America, as you know, like public schools cannot ever teach religion. It's like one of the laws there.
It comes from the history. So the state refused to teach Catholics when we were under British rule, and so the only people who could step in was the Catholic Church and the Christian churches to provide this education for people, because if you were Catholic, you were not entitled to an education within the public system. So the schools took over, and then when we became a free state, they continued to provide this education system because they owned all the infrastructure for it, and it just became part of what it is. But they followed the national curriculum, and I had a fully Catholic education. I can't say that I was particularly taught overarchingly, like it didn't feel as Catholic as what people describe Catholic education in the US or somewhere.
So
like
what happens to like an atheist kid? Like, does he just rolls his eyes whenever it's Catholic school time or whenever it's Bible time?
Essentially, they're exempt, and they would, like, by their parents' choice, they might do some other activity, art or crafts, whatever they choose. And then when you have the specific confirmation and stuff, they would just be exempt or provided another alternative.
Does sex ed get really awkward because of the religious background?
This causes challenges, definitely, because it contravenes with the religious ethos of the school. But there is obligations of the state to provide this education. So there is definitely a conflict there. And I think definitely in my childhood, it was not particularly well managed, but supposedly it's much better these days. I do not have experience of that more modern.
Is the life begins at conception thing going into sex ed class too?
I think it does. It's definitely an aspect, or at least the more details are left out. So it depends on, it depends, because your morality is shaped by religion, and how you teach it depends. And usually this concept is too difficult for at least a primary school, elementary school level. Maybe in a secondary school level, it's a bit more, but you have more critique of what you're being taught. So I don't know if it's necessarily harmful, and if it's necessarily as direct as you would see in a religious school in other countries, but for us it's just the norm. Because even outside of this 80% Catholic schools, the other 10% are Church of England schools or Church of Ireland schools, and then other religions, and then maybe 5% are non-religious. But it's very much the norm to be in these schools. So because it's the norm, it becomes much more diluted in that religiousness sense. It's especially as society becomes less religious, these schools are a lot less religious than they were. It's just a byproduct of our history.
That's really interesting, Gary. What is public school like in Korea, Beth? Is it determined by your neighborhood, or can you go to any school that you want when you're young?
Well, as up until elementary school, unless you're choosing to go to private school, which some of them do, you are both basically, just like Gary mentioned, it's postal lottery. So if it's close to your neighborhood, you would go to certain elementary school. But what happens is that in Korea, the quality of education depends also a lot with the neighborhood. So what the parents, not so much in elementary school, but in middle school, the parents would choose to move to certain neighborhood or district to go to a certain middle school. So they would maybe move their address code for like a very temporary period of time to get their kids to get to certain middle school, which where the academic environment is slightly better than the
Is it
other
easy to
middle
just
schools.
move to another neighborhood? Like, I would assume that it costs more money to move to a
Yes.
neighborhood with good schools. So are the parents
Yes.
just like selling all their possessions for a couple of years to like make sure the kid has a good education?
Yeah, so like in Korea, the real estate environment is slightly more correlated with the educational institution is at least in Seoul. So like the highest
So much
price
correlated, yeah.
the priciest apartments and the priciest district would have the most prestigious like middle schools or high schools, even though they're like public schools. So the middle schools would have a lot of students who would end up going to like a very prestigious universities graduate. It all correlates to where your district is. So there's a lot of tension among parents who have their kids in their age of middle school to whether to move to Gangnam or Mokdong or certain areas where educational environment is slightly more competitive, I should say. So that's how it works.
Does that mean that essentially poorer kids that live in worse neighborhoods are kind of just stuck in public schools that they're just not competitive with the ones in the better neighborhoods that you mentioned?
Yes. And the thing is, the educational system in Korea, like the public education up until high school, it's very complicated. So it's not every public schools are standardized. So there's like a segment of high schools or middle schools that are controlled solely by the government, or the Ministry of Education or the metropolitan educational districts. But there's also high schools that are somewhat public, but at the same time private. So the founder is like a corporation or a family. So it's founded by
Did you say a corporation, like Coke or Samsung or something?
Yes, something like that. But they are not like the sole owner of the high school, but they would like maybe like invest a bit.
What is the benefit of a corporation owning part of a high school?
Well, I mean,
can they put their advertisements on the high school or something? Like, what's the end game here?
I wouldn't say that, but it's just that they have a lot of things involved. You know how Korean conglomerates, they are involved in many different industries, not just in one industry. Like one company would do semiconductors, but also beverages. So they are in every kind of industry. So they end up owning like an art gallery as well, although it's very different kind of industry. So some very tiny corporation, I'm not talking about like big five like LG or Samsung, but they would own a very tiny part of like high school or middle school. So for those high schools, students, if they want to enter, they would get tested for admissions. Or if you want to go to like a gifted and talented school, we call them like foreign language schools or like science schools or like academy, then the entrance is very competitive. Like you would have to study very hard in your like 5th or 6th grade in your elementary school to get into those high schools and middle schools. But once you get in there, you're almost always guaranteed to have a very competitive but better education. So you're more educated with different kinds of environments.
So let's get into like the path for a lot of students. Would you say that the top tier students probably go to college, and in America it's kind of a status thing to go to college? It almost looks like you're unsuccessful if you don't go to college. Is that similar in Korea?
Very much so. Yes, I think because like Korea, it itself developed quite drastically economically and socially, like in the last 50, 60 years. Education was like the only social, like the means of ladder to get into like a social mobility or economic mobility. So a lot of our parents, like in my parents' generation, their parents, so my grandparents would always tell them to like study hard, and they would even sacrifice their own like comfort to support all the kids' education. And the thing is that the first generation of the people who are generally educated in college and university did actually elevate in their social mobility. So ended up, going into good companies and working and earning a lot of money and buy apartment and so on and so forth. Well,
so you're saying like the most realistic path for a poor person to elevate his social status is through education, and that's very possible in Korea, even though, let's say, the poor person went to a worse public school. Does he have a path for success if he studies hard enough?
we had a lot of precedents, like ministers, like presidents. They were from like the poorest of the poorest families, but they studied very hard and they, passed the bar exam or passed some government exams. So they ended up working, in a minister or like a lawyer, and they become like, they achieve a certain social mobility. But that's like a 2 generation before me. So I think that sort of myth, I should say, it's becoming wearing down these days because there's way too many students or kids going into university without knowing what they want to do. And there are way too many university in Korea, to be honest. There's about 400 university, 4-year accredited university in South Korea. That's a lot in comparison to like the declining population of those who are, in the age of entering college. So there's a lot of discussions about what to do, how this is too much for the students and all for the university. So the educational environment, it's trying to slim down the number of universities in Korea as well. But there's a lot of resistance, so it's very hard to do. Yes.
So there was this culture where, education can give you this opportunity to advance your social status, but it's gotten to the point where that's not necessarily true anymore. But everyone still believes in this idea where you have to go to college to increase your social status, but that's just not realistic anymore because of how many universities there are and the dilution of the graduating class and how there's too many applicants for so many jobs. Let's get into New Zealand. Jonathan, if you're a good student, you probably go to college, but is there more of a acceptance of just like working class jobs after high school? Like if you're not doing that, if you didn't study that well or you didn't get great grades, do more people go into trades, or do they try their best to get into a college and then try to work their way from there?
Yeah, so there's definitely been an evolution in the way higher education has been thought of, right? There's this paradigm shift, I think, over the years now, recently anyways. What Beth and Gary actually mentioned, university sort of education not sort of predicting as much success as one would like to expect anymore. So the government actually introduced these policies that help students get sort of the first year of university free, in that they actually can sort of select certain courses that they would be interested in and try them before even going the whole 3 years for a bachelor's degree. But more than that, though, is that they actually are, if I'm not mistaken, special grants. I've not sort of encouragement now to go into trade school and sort of study these subjects that traditionally have not been as favored or as.
It doesn't look like a path.
Yeah, not regardless
to wealth.
Yeah, so when I say non-traditional, meaning like I said, sort of trade school sort of subjects, because it's true that there's been more and more demand for construction type jobs, jobs in, say, even farming, which is obviously one of our biggest industries, right? As opposed to people just pretty much taking medicine and science, law. And I think that's pretty much a universal trend. So it's been that sort of push really to try to encourage people to go, and select the, alternative routes that actually, what promise as much of a good, if not better future, more for sort of a secure and promising job prospect. Anyway,
I would say like studying trades is probably a higher success rate than studying most majors. Like
having said that, I guess it takes time to change mentalities, but also that I don't know if we have enough evidence yet to sort of definitively say that by going to these trade routes, that you would definitely guarantee a better future, because even though it's true that jobs are kind of getting harder and harder to come by in terms of the traditional industries, it's still is a huge indicator and predictor of success, right, in terms of getting a high-paying job and having better social mobility, like what Beth said. So it's going to take time, but we're getting there.
I mean, there's a stigma against going into trades in America, which is really unfortunate lately, because I think similar to Korea, we all think that the path to success is to go to college, and you do whatever you can to get into college, including accumulating a lot of debt and then like studying a major, even though like you're not very passionate about it. In fact, I think it's like less than 10% of like high school seniors going into trade like occupations or apprenticeships in America. But I heard that that's slightly different in Europe. I think there's a more of an acceptance of that in Europe. Gary, can you confirm that?
Mainland Europe, definitely, but definitely in English-speaking Europe, the same problem that you've outlined in these other countries, of that the university degree is overvalued, and is the most important thing, and going into an apprenticeship is very much frowned upon. I think the UK do it better than at least in Ireland. So when I lived there was so many apprentice schemes, and they funded apprentice schemes, and there was people who were equivalent to me who had come through that system, and had basically avoided my 5 years of college and earned money for those 5 years and had more real experience than me with my conceptual engineering. They knew more than I did coming out, and never had any debt and earned the whole way through. And you're kind of like, was it the right choice to spend 5 years of my life doing education? I'm not fully sure for the type of field. I think the truth is, as you climb the corporate ladder, there's a point where not having a degree or not having a master's will stop you, and that's still fundamentally true. It's not right, but it's fundamentally, if you're looking at two candidates, one has a master's degree, one has come through an apprentice scheme, often the decision will go towards that perception of education being more valuable. And I think that's true throughout Ireland, the UK, and now where I live, Canada.
Do you know why mainland Europe has a more, like they accept kids going to trade school more than the US or UK or other countries?
I think it's just been more part of their culture. It's always been part of their culture, and there's always been a value system, a value of that. It's partly strong unions for creating a strong image of these trades. It's partly just the cultural difference. The word engineer means different things if you translate it through Latin versus the English language, and things like that change the meaning of what you're talking about in some way in the culture. But it's very much valued in a similar way going through the trades, and the pay is equivalent, if not more, and it's a secure career in a way that it's perceived as not a secure career, at least in Ireland, as far as I'm concerned.
So I want to say something controversial here, Gary. Is it because like the countries that have good colleges think that college is the way to success, whereas in mainland Europe, the colleges don't have the same quality?
I think it's that bias that when you say that's the bias of the English language, that the preference
I'm
of
just
our
saying
higher
America
education.
has the best universities.
But it's the preference of the English language that makes you don't understand the German study in the same way that you would understand a study through English, and it doesn't travel as well because and I think that's the bias towards these better universities. And also in mainland Europe, the universities are much more trade focused. So there's an engineering school and they only care about engineering. There is a German language school and that's university and they focus on that. It's much more stratified, whereas the universities in the English speaking world try and be an expert in everything, and try and be the best in everything. And it's slightly different. I don't know.
It's very purposeful in mainland Europe. Like you go to university for this purpose to get this specific job.
Almost certainly, but even it's already you've already made that stream choice in secondary school. There is secondary schools for engineering. There's secondary schools for medicine. There's secondary schools for technical, for artistic, or for arts. And you've already made that choice. There's none of this wishy-washy general entry. Figure out your major. In Ireland, we've aspects.
So I'm going to assume that there's less of a social aspect to college in mainland Europe, because like in America, like college is about the experience, like getting to hang out in that environment. Whereas in mainland Europe, maybe it's not as common. Maybe it's just like very utility driven. Like this is my stepping stone to get the job. It's
definitely more that. I'm sure that the social aspect is very valuable and important, but it's definitely not the reason people go to university. It's definitely not a driving force as to why you would do this. And I would say that's also true for in Ireland, I suppose this concept of after your freedom of university is the first time you live alone is probably quite alluring to a lot of people, and it's why a lot of people pick courses that are not suitable to them. So yeah, this is probably true too.
Okay. So do all people go to university, like in your country, in Europe, or only a few people?
I can't speak to other countries, but definitely at the point of time I went to university, everyone was aiming to be in university. There was no one who was making any other plans, and it was very much the exception if they were going into a trade or were planning to join some other organization. We were all bred to go to university, and that was the expectation. You were failing. You were failing if you didn't get into university, as far as my perception and most of our perception was at that time. And not everyone did, but it definitely was where we were positioned, because our final exams were fully based on how we would enter university and ranking us in a way to get into our university courses. And that was what all our education system had been building up for all my life.
Okay.
So you guys got to spend some time in an American university, and the biggest characteristic that distinguishes American universities is that the American student is usually burdened with a crap ton of student loans. And I'm assuming this isn't very common in your countries. Is that more or less true?
How much do you spend on college education on average?
So essentially, the better the college, the more you spend on it. And the best colleges tend to have the best kind of like name to it. Like it's like almost like a brand, you know what I mean?
So could you have a kind of price range? Could you name some?
So I would say like the brand name colleges, the ones that people know, probably have a great football team, are probably like $50,000 a year for undergraduate study.
Oh my
How much
God.
did you pay to go to college in Korea? And Andrew, for those of you listening, Andrew went to the second best college in all of Korea.
First best. First
No,
best.
no, I would say that best college in Korea, best private school in Korea, right? That because she and I
no,
were into the same school.
One of the best, top in Asia. One of the top in Asia, I would say.
Wow. So I think I don't know how much was it. For me, a year it was like $7,000, $8,000 per year.
Hmm.
And this is a quality
tuition
education
fee.
too, right? This is like one of the top universities in the world, right, Andrew?
No, I don't think there's a big difference in tuition between Korean universities. It depends on your major, your school, whether you're private or you're public. It's different, but compared to the United States, still the education price for college is not that much comparable to your country, to America.
Why
right?
is the college so much more affordable in your country? Is it because the state sponsors a lot of it? Or I guess you probably don't have football teams and you don't have a lot of unnecessary things in your universities?
So Beth can answer it, I think.
Well, I mean, even though there's a distinction between public and private, it's more or less how the degrees in which the Ministry of Education sponsors the funding. Regardless of whether you're public or private, all of the universities are funded by the government. Yes, it's just a matter of percentage. I think there's a lot of pressure given by the government to begin with to halt the increase of tuition in colleges. So as far as I know, it's been about a decade since the colleges and universities in Korea were allowed to increase their tuition. So it's been stalled basically for the last decades. So
10
there
years,
is a tremendous financial tension and burden among the universities in Korea these days because of inflation. The price goes up every year. But regardless of that, they weren't allowed very much. It's not spoken, but implied that they're not allowed to increase their tuitions. Yes, so it's been
So the state does fund a lot of the teacher salaries and the buildings and everything. Is that the same in Ireland and New Zealand? Like the state funds a lot of the higher education, and that's what makes it affordable for the student? New Zealand can go first.
Oh, you said Ireland and New Zealand, so I thought, the big gentleman that I am. Yeah, that's true. Pretty much what Beth said. The states does fund a lot of the all the higher education establishments. So and that's therefore also limited the increase. Although I must say the school fees have been increasing though, slowly but surely. They've been climbing every year. Having said that, again, it's largely states funded as well. So it's been kept under under check. So it's I think actually we kind of pay about the same as you guys in terms of year of undergrad, so like 7,000-8,000 like that for some time.
Per year.
It goes to about 10, I think, for a postgrad. Yeah, per year. So obviously it always scares me when Americans say, "Oh, I pay this much," and I'm like, "Well, that's my whole degree for your 1 year." But having said that, I think beyond the funding as well, I think it's important to say that the good thing about New Zealand's public school system is that really, whichever school you go to, I would say have a pretty good chance, more of an equal chance compared to other schools of getting to university. So quality, this disparity in quality does not contrast as much. Because yes,
well, to be fair, the population of New Zealand is less than like Los Angeles, right?
It is a little bit less, yeah. But having said that, you'd be surprised. Inequality is, we know strange that inequality. It's been growing, over the years. But so luckily we still have this DSOL system where schools will get different amounts of funding depending on the socioeconomic status of the students that go to those schools. And when you talk about quality of education, to prepare the students to get university entrance, it's a pretty fair chance wherever you are in New Zealand.
Gary, you spent time in an American university. Do you think it's worth all the debt that Americans get because you had such a fun time there?
I had a fun time, but bringing it back to alcohol, there was some weird rules about that. But other than that, I had a good time. Weird relationship to alcohol in your education system. But anyway, I'm not sure it's worth the debt, and it's definitely not worth the homework. That was the thing that I suffered the most from, was constant homework. So I don't know. I was fortunate enough that I just paid my own home fee, and the poor University of California person who came to Dublin paid their fee, and I got this slightly better world-class education for €3,000. So it's not too bad as a deal for me, but I don't know. It was very different. I found it a very different experience, in particular when studying engineering. I found the US system to be much more theoretical than necessarily mine was, where it was more practical and I could see the actual association of what I was learning. I found the US system, at least from an engineering perspective, so far removed from the real world, and that it just kind of didn't make sense. And that there was kind of an overload of homework related to, there was pointless homework and so many exams. It was very overbearing versus the system that I spent the rest of my education system doing, where most of our things were based on the final exam.
So yeah, that's what I find very interesting about European colleges. You guys literally study for one test, and that determines everything, right? And in America, you get midterms, you get homework, you get everything. But in Europe, if you pass a one thing, you're good, right?
Yeah, and you'd maybe have to repeat it if you failed, but the one exam, and I've been trained all my life for that one exam system, so that is how my secondary school finished. That's how.
But wouldn't that just cause panic attacks for people?
I was more stressed ever in my life, having homework where I was below average in the class, having a midterm every 2-3 weeks, and studying for this. I much prefer our system. I can focus on the learning and then study. Whereas it's a constant need to study, doesn't really work. You're constantly just learning for this tiny amount, 2 weeks worth of lessons for one exam, then you move on to the next 2 weeks for another exam. Maybe it works for some people, but for me, this was much harder than having just one exam and being focused on that, focusing on the learning, focusing on exploring these concepts, and then thinking about the exam at the end and learning how to study for that exam.
So don't you think that you got a good education experience in the United States? I mean, did you learn some kind of good education or prospect from the States college?
Well, it was clearly the hardest year of his life, apparently. So it must have been good.
Hard isn't necessarily good. I think it was more work. It was more stressful. Okay, I didn't fully understand the system, so which was also part of the problem, was that being below average I was surrounded by people who were high achievers, and they were telling me how terrible this was. But little did I know, most people in the US were not very good at final exams or exams in general. And so my average shot back up again all of a sudden. And so I couldn't figure out. So for me, it turned out that the way I study for exams and being prepared for exams means I can achieve more in an exam versus my continuous assessment. And because the system was balanced more towards the continuous assessment, I was struggling a bit. But definitely in the end, it kind of worked out for me, but it was very stressful, and it didn't necessarily mean I learned particularly much more. I felt when I went back to Ireland, I was behind my peers rather than ahead of my peers after this world-class education I came to go to. Now, this could have been related to trying to make the most of your study abroad experience, but there was a balance there. But I think it was slightly different for me.
Well, if it's a silver lining, Gary, I'm sure the kid that replaced you and went to Ireland was having the time of his life, only have to study for one exam. I wanted to get into a phenomenon that I think is really interesting about America, where a lot of the people in power, let's say politicians or people that control a lot of things that have a lot of money, seem to have the same path to get to that position of power, where they go to a very prestigious university, they meet the right people, and then they end up in like Washington D.C., the capital of America, and then they work for politicians. They become politicians or they become lobbyists, stuff like that, and they control a lot of America. And they seem to be in the same demographic because they all went to the same college and they have kind of like the same background. But do the people in power in your country seem to have the same path to power as well? Let's start with Korea, for example.
Andrew.
Yeah, that's a good question. But like the higher class society, we can say that still in Korea. I think
I guess
when it
the
comes to,
question,
like,
a better question is like,
yeah.
do you see like more working class, like poor people from poor backgrounds in position of power in Korea, or is it kind of like the same upper class people, like in that movie that won all those Oscars, where the rich family was?
Oh yeah, Parasite.
Parasite.
You mean?
I couldn't think of the name. Yeah, Parasite. But like, yeah, is the rich families always controlling like politicians and stuff like that, or like do you see people from poor backgrounds, like the rich family servants, end up in position of power?
Social status, it matters a lot. It's basically true that the rich family have a good, better, more chances to have a better education, go to better college, and success their father's role or like a mother's role. Like upper class can stay easier to stay in the upper class and working. It's basically the same, but still I believe that if you graduate from some good university, lots of my friends from my university are not from like rich or like upper class. Most of my friends in my university were from just like from like working class, like me. But I believe that I believe that if I study hard and work hard, there's a still high chance to go up to the ladder.
Probably.
Yeah, but compared to the United States, I think Korea has more like equal opportunity, I believe. Still, but it's true that some poor students who cannot afford the tuition fee, although we say it's cheaper than America, but still it's very expensive for some students from poor family. But still, I believe that Korea has kind of good loan system that you can finish your college by paying for the tuition, like by using a loan from the government. And once you finish your college, I think the more what matters is after the college. I think still in Korea, unless you graduate from good university, getting a job is really difficult.
So
Because
in
people-
America, like
yeah.
the college gives you like that network, and it gives you like a brand name on your resume, essentially.
It's
Is that
the same,
similar in Korea, where like in like the common characteristics for the people in power, politicians, are I have this degree from Yonsei, where Andrew went, or is there a chance of someone getting in a position of power that was like a janitor for like most of his life or something, or like a working class person?
I think the importance is the name of the degree or which university you graduate. The importance has been decreasing. I think there are lots of politicians who even didn't graduate the university, and still he can be a politician because lots of middle class or poor class people are voting for him because they think he can support, he can how to say, he can represent the how poorest thing and the policies that for poor people. Yeah, I think the importance is a college degree. It has been decreasing, I guess. What do you think, Pat?
Well, I think the importance and the symbol that it has, it used to be more highlighted than it ever before, but now I think it's starting to be watered down. It's maybe in politics. So even though you might be like a strong man in some party, that wouldn't necessarily mean that you had a very prestigious college education or passed the bar exam. Actually, the political climate in Korea is somewhat different. I think it's becoming more democratized to a certain extent that even though you have as long as you have the background that requires you to represent a certain voice of a certain social issue, I think there's a greater chance for them to become a politician than the past. Because like as far as I remember, like a lot of the politicians or legislators in the past were like those American politicians these days, like coming from a certain background with a certain education, with certain ways into connecting into their political background. But I think generally, if you look at the society itself, I think there is still a brand that really marks you of who you are if you're coming from a certain university or if you're living in a certain district. That really associates you as who you are. Like, for example, a lot of my friends back in college, there are a greater number of students who are actually studying abroad and going to law school in America, or having gone to law school in Korea, and now they're working as like a lawyer or like a big investment banker and so on and so forth. But when I talk to like other friends back in like in my high school, the demographic background of what they are doing these days in terms of career, it's more diversified. So I think it really gives you, it still is a very significant portion of how you're shaped socially, like as a person, as like a social persona. So I think it still plays a certain role, but not so much in politics, I think.
Okay, that's good to know. Let's get into our final question for today's show. What do you think we will be seeing in the future of education? Jonathan, you haven't spoken in a while. Like, you want to start us off here?
Well, more and more money. It's getting commercialized day in, day out, every day as we go. So I would say that with a lot of optimism, but it is true that, I mean, it's just one industry out of many that people have realized that, hey, we can make a lot of money out of this. And I think as an American, you should probably be best positioned to talk about that. But having said that,
would you go to like Gatorade University if they subsidize your tuition?
No, but then again, it's easy to talk about principle and values when I come from a background that has given me an education, right? So I understand that privilege. But having said that, though, I think that there has been a lot more of a consciousness now, right, about actually actively choosing, at least the kind of things that you study in higher education. Actually taking sort of more of a conscious approach to deciding your path as you go forward in education, right? Not sort of give into that pressure, at least not too much anyways, of having to just get a degree of whatever sorts to ensure a better future. Yeah, I do concede that, it is still somewhat necessary going forward. There's still, predict a better future, with more options. I feel like, I guess maybe it is our responsibility to better educate, to then better, in terms of better sort of, informing the children that I guess want to go into uni, to then sort of have them, set them up better, I guess, studying what they actually not just want to study, but maybe should be studying, although it's a kind of an argument that goes, back and forth, I would say. So generally, I'm optimist in terms of us maybe making smarter choices, but not too optimistic in terms of the cost of education and access of higher education.
So what I would like to see in the future is more of a diversity in how education is provided. Right now, it seems to be, well, in America, for example, it's just like some top universities, and everyone thinks that you got to go there as your path to success. Whereas in the future, maybe like there's the opportunity to do like more specialized universities to study like one specific thing that you're really passionate about. And maybe there's distinguished schools for like art and distinguished schools for like a very specific thing, like podcasting. Like people went to a podcasting university and then they started something great like that. Gary, what do you think about the future of university?
I think it'll become a lot more digital. I think we've proven that a lot of that can be done digitally in this process. So I think that's a part of the future, and I think the diversity, as you mentioned, is the future as well. I think the value of just a pure degree is lessening, especially as more people have it. And I think the diversity of experience is seen as valuable. And I think within the workplace, other experiences will become value as the degree becomes almost meaningless as a way of judging if someone's good or bad. It'll be more based on their experience and more practical, I think, a bit more.
Yes, because technology can really help with this transition of the future of education. And I think this can go not even just for university, but it can go from like when you're a little kid too, because unfortunately there are some neighborhoods in America, probably in other countries too, where your public school education isn't going to be great. Like that's just a fact. And then it's going to be hard to concentrate because the students aren't that interested in getting the education. So if you're a parent that lives in this kind of neighborhood, maybe there's a future where your kid could take a couple classes online, and then there's a standardized government-sponsored online university that's pretty good no matter like where you live. You just need an internet connection to that, and then maybe that's the future for some students that are willing to learn from home. Because I think homeschooling is kind of looked at as being weird back in like most of my lifetime, but maybe because of all the technological innovations, and especially because of shelter in place right now, maybe it's more acceptable, like online homeschooling.
Yeah, and also I think we should, I don't know, when we have our children later, I want them that they become more diversified. I mean, they don't have to pursue the goal that the other people are pursuing. Like, you don't have to go to good college. There are a lot of good opportunities besides going to college. But going to university degree and having a good degree. Like you said, as Joseph said, is the society become more digitalized, and there are a lot of ways to be success besides getting a good job, getting a good university. For example, there are a lot of, there's good example, the YouTuber. Like, there are a lot of people who get popular through YouTube or through Instagram, who doesn't have a college degree at all, and they become popular. They're earning a lot of money, and who can blame them for not having a university degree, right? So I believe the future of education, I wish, is a kind of in terms of diversification.
On that point, it's interesting. We always see people, lauding the successes of, people that have pretty much changed civilization as we speak, right? Steve Jobs, Zuckerberg, and the likes. And all of them actually never finished college, huh? And no one
exactly
sort of
yeah
highlight that part of their
but they also had a ton of money from their families that
like true.
Even
that's true. But
even if they failed,
but
like there wouldn't be like that much circumstance, or like they wouldn't be in bad.
That's true, of course. The social structures behind our our backgrounds and our pathways should always be taken into account, right? But I feel like we can also maybe look beyond that and say like, hey, what are the things that they have done and they're doing now that maybe our education systems aren't really preparing our kids to do? Maybe in terms of like creativity, innovation, actually giving kids opportunities to develop those skills, right? Leadership skills, for example. I don't know if those skills are actually highlighted enough compared to the traditional math, science, literacy, and that's all you need. You know what I mean? I feel like maybe going forward, those can be good, useful parts to highlight as well and to develop more so than just the traditional.
Yeah, so essentially society needs to evolve with the changing times and provide a path for education that isn't in the traditional means, because there definitely is way more paths to success now, and the innovation that comes from it is not always the typical go to college, go to graduate school, and follow all the rules, right?
Yep.
Pass.
I think
Fine.
and I think it's a very good time for everybody, not just like students, but parents and just everybody, like even the professors, to re-examine the whole system of higher education. Because the thing is, everybody would just go and think like, well, you first have to enter university and start thinking about and start evaluating. But I think the truth is, like, there might be some people who wouldn't need necessarily to have a university education to pursue what they want to do, like Andrew mentioned, like YouTube creator, or like if you want to be a good cook, you wouldn't have to have a university degree. But I think there has been, in society in general, less thought or less examination about like what really is in the value of higher education. So that's I think that's the reason why a lot of people saw this as like a huge chance to gain good money and easy money. That's why there's a lot of bubble in higher education industry. But now with the COVID and like everybody in lockdown and universities temporarily closed, because a lot of the educational contents are all digitalized and in Coursera or edX, it's a really good time for everybody as like a very objective point of view to look and like what they're actually being provided in terms of in their educational institution, like whether this is like better than, let's say, in MIT or in Yonsei or whatever. So it's like, I think it's a good time to examine like if they're paying the good money to get what they really want. So it would be very tough for the universities in general around the world to face this very harsh climate and being like judged and evaluated in a very cold way. But I think it's very much necessary for everybody else, not just us, but like maybe our children's generation or children's generation. So I think it's a very positive aspect in some ways. Although COVID is very ugly, yes.
So what I'm hoping for is that there's going to be a future where there is an online university that is a prestigious online university where anyone in the world can go to at any time, and all of our children will make it into that, and they'll all be classmates in the class of 2040 or whatever it is, and then we'll all celebrate their graduations together. And on that note, it's time to end the show. For Andrew, Beth, Gary, and Jonathan, my name is Joseph, and thanks for listening to Foreigners Talk American.